What I like about hearing your work side by side is how it illustrates the many ways Florida can be approached and interpreted in literature. So I'm curious, what is it about Florida that inspires you and makes you want to write about it? I guess we can pass this down, or you can project. We'll pass it down.
I'll project. I have no choice. Florida is where I live. It's what I must write about because I'm here. And I think I would be equally inspired in like Michigan, but I don't know. So I think Florida does have like a special sort of humid interestingness. I don't know. It's what I know.
Yeah. So when I read fiction, the setting, I think, often really dictates the kind of emotional tenor of the piece. But I'm with you, Susan. I mean, I don't know that I've ever really written anything serious that wasn't set in Florida because I'm very much Florida, a Florida kid, born and raised. And then when I think about, some of the novels that I love, for instance, set in the Midwest, right? They have that really kind of cold and stoic tone. Or I think of Dennis Johnson writing about California, and how even though, in the depths of his kind of pervasive sadness, there's this like golden hued beauty about the whole thing, right? But to me, Florida is fascinating because it feels so volatile. It can be so many different things simultaneously. We're sitting here on the, in a city carved from swamp and forest, right? Which could be easily overtaken at any minute again. And, it will probably be in the ocean in like 35 years, so. But there's something that really speaks to me about that. I've often felt kind of restless and out of place, and Florida is a setting to me that really speaks to that. So many people kind of pass through here or end up here, not on the best terms. And I think that's, really beautiful in its own way. It's like a place of last resort for people.
I'm going to pass the mic to the left-hand side. All right, we're going to do it. We're all getting an arm workout up here. All right. So for everyone, we'll go down maybe the line. Because this is a collaborative event, I'm wondering how, if you seek out art outside your own discipline, so writing or music, for inspiration, and how that art inspires you generally, or maybe there's a specific example of an encounter you've had or something like that.
Well, I would say as a composer, collaboration is kind of part of the gig because, you have to work with musicians. You can just compose things at your computer all the time, which is, some people do.
Which we just did.
That's but it's oftentimes more interesting to play with others, right? So I enjoy very much working with whatever ensemble I'm writing for, but I also, really enjoy working with people totally outside of my discipline. Like, it was a real pleasure working with Susan. I very much enjoyed her poetry. I find it very inspiring and beautiful. I love how she draws from Florida themes. Her piece was about the Mead Garden, which I've been to and I love. And I tried to respect that by including natural sounds from Florida, like the birds that you heard were all native Florida birds, things like that. So yeah, that's me.
Hi. Collaboration is kind of at the heart of what I want to accomplish with the Composers Forum. We do have another, by the way, just to sidetrack it a little bit, we have another collaboration kind of like this coming up in January with the Orlando Story Club. I'm really looking forward to that. We have 7 composers working with 7 storytellers and a wind quintet from Alterity Chamber Orchestra. So be on the lookout for that. One of the first, I've collaborated multiple times over the course of my career we'll call it a career. But one of the very first ones that kind of jumped out as interesting for me was when I was getting my doctorate in Minneapolis at the University of Minnesota, I took an independent study with the dance department, and so I worked kind of over the course of an entire semester with just 3 graduate level choreographers. And over the course of those 15 weeks, I got to really kind of appreciate and come to learn that they had a vocabulary that I was unfamiliar with, and so kind of getting an insider's perspective over time felt really wonderful. But one of our final kind of project assignments was I had to go with these 3 choreographers to the Weissman Art Museum, and we had to pick 3 pieces of art and then respond together to that art. And one of the ones, the kind of a standout one, was Georgia O'Keeffe, her Oriental Poppies painting. And so I made a piece for 2 guitars, and this dancer made a dance to it, and it just seemed so synchronously kind of just perfect. And the dance went together. And the thing was, I went my own way, and I just wrote the piece, and then she made the dance, and we just put them together to see how they went. And it was as if they were meant to be together. It was really kind of a wonderful experience. So that's one of many kind of things like that. But so.
Hi. So in terms of collaboration, I actually did 2 different projects when I was in undergrad in Ohio with poets from the English major department, and we did improv in the recording studio. So we didn't actually have any practice time. They just gave us a poem and we recorded, and we just improv'd over it. So when I heard that we were going to be doing something, similar to it, I was really excited because I've done it for 2 years before, and they always turned out really fun. And it was actually a way to kind of experiment with new sounds. I actually play upright bass. This is my main instrument. So I could try new sounds. I had to make my bass sound like a wolf running in the woods one time. So that was really cool. But when I'm composing, for the most part, I'm composing for myself. I haven't gotten to collaborate with a lot of people, especially in Florida, because I've only been in Florida for 4 years. I moved from New York. So I was really excited to work with some other people and get some new stuff, and actually have somebody else's idea and be like, here's my music. I think it matches your idea really well. So.
Well, writers aren't usually very good collaborators. It's true, and I think it's all for the good. Because if I actually thought about what someone would think, much less a potential collaborator, about what I was writing, it would completely poison the whole process for me. I mean, I can't be that self-conscious, or I would not write a word. So often I write things that I really don't expect to ever see the light of day, and when they do, I'm always a little surprised. So I'm very grateful that, somebody else, like Mark and Tim, could see some potential for music collaboration with the poems. And so it's something, the first collaboration I ever saw between artists, I was really young. I went to BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music, and saw Laurie Anderson, Robert Rauschenberg, and Trisha Brown, like dance, art, and her music. And I was just, how does that even happen? It's just so, but to even take some steps into that world is really, really exciting, because it makes me see my poems in a different way and hear them and feel them in a different way. And so it's cool.
She didn't have to do anything to collaborate. I just read her poems and went, okay, we're collaborating.
Exactly.
Read poem here. It's really funny. I write all this, mostly I write for acoustic instruments, and I can write for symphony orchestra, and I can use, people always like, Mark, you should write for films. And I just look at a picture and go, I got nothing. It doesn't work for me. I don't know, but words, I don't know what it is. Words, if I read a book or I read a poem or something, all of a sudden all kinds of sounds start popping in my head. I'm not so big with pictures. It's amazing. So when I first read her poems from the book, and I thought that they had, and I have to say this, is just, a lot of them deal with things in the past. They're like these memories, and that's why I wanted to make the music a little bit like a memory or sort of dreamlike, because she refers back to these earlier times in Florida when she was growing up and when she was, and that's what struck me about it. So I wanted the tone to sort of be a little more of this dreamlike thing. And I just don't think there was ever a freaking better time to be alive than in 1989 Orlando. I rented a house for $350 on Woodland Avenue between Phelps and Bonita. I mean, like mansions everywhere, and $350. And I worked 3 days a week at Dexter's and played free jazz all the rest of the time.
I remember you.
Yeah. It turns out that I didn't know. I mean, I didn't meet her for real, I guess. Well, I did meet you for real, but I didn't meet her for real until I moved back to town just like 3 or so years ago. But it turns out we were probably in the same room with a bunch of jazz musicians back in the late 80s, because her ex-husband was a fantastic bass player, and they had jam sessions late at night, and I know I was there a bunch of times. So,
Stop talking, more will come out.
but anyway, so we have this like connection from way, way back in the jazz thing.
Right.
So I just sort of felt that sort of doing this sort of ambient, classical, and jazz-related sort of piece to these poems that she wrote, I don't know, it was just sort of a no-brainer to me. It just, you know, it's the time I read them and I went, okay, I know what to do. But like I said, I'm terrible with pictures. I wish I was better. But there's no pictures in your book, is there? No.
So collaboration is not something I do terribly frequently, but I have done a few projects in the past and find it really, really gratifying, and partially actually, Susan, exactly for the reason that you said, that it really forces you to kind of let go of your ego in the whole thing, right? Like, I've used some software to collaborate several years ago with this Australian writer. It was called Google Wave, I think, or something like that. Google Wave, I think it was called, but it's dead now. But it allowed us to like write and edit simultaneously, so sitting across the world from each other, and we were actually just tinkering and pulling words in and out of lines. And I found it really, really fascinating, you know, and stuff emerged from that process that I thought was really cool. But, you know, as far as looking to other mediums, I mean, I think there's something just incredibly human about this need to interpret our experiences. And so I find that my closest friends are almost always artists of one kind or another. And one of my dearest friends is actually a tattoo artist, and he's really, really dedicated to his craft. He's got this massive library of reference works on tattoo cultures around the world. And it's amazing. It just blows my mind to sit and talk to him, and the things that he expresses about the struggles in his process or his inspirations ring totally true for me as a writer as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time in whatever art museums and listening to music and watching film, and yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from that stuff, you know, and it's not the kind of thing that I would ever try to pin down exactly what comes from where, but to kind of chase the unknowable through those mediums, which, as you say, like, I have no, you know, you give me a paintbrush and I'm useless, you know, but I can look at a painting and appreciate it, but yeah, that's my answer, I suppose.
I just wanted to grab it on the way past again. When you started to say seeing Laurie Anderson at BAM, me too, but it was not. I did actually not the same show, but I saw her do Moby Dick at BAM at one point. It was just really mind blowing. It's fantastic.
So kind of one last round for the writers and musicians, kind of separate questions, but the same spirit. For the writers, you know, what was your thought process in picking out the poems or novel excerpts, you know, that you thought might go well with music, or in Susan's case, it sounds like Mark picked them. So, like, what did you think of his choices? So that one's specifically for Susan. You know, did Mark do a good job? And but yeah, like Shane, how did you kind of like pick your excerpts and whatnot? And then for the musicians, I'm curious how you first received the work, if you read it or heard a recording, and ultimately if like the text was more important, like what you read and processed in terms of meaning, or if like the sounds of the words had an effect, and you know why you chose the things that you chose, the instruments you chose, and just kind of generally riff on that. And then if the audience has questions, we'll deal with that.
So, was it the text or the sound of Susan reading the text? I would say yes. It was it's probably both. I tried to, let's see, where to start. I found that the title of the book as a whole to be very interesting, Venus in Retrograde. I used materials from Gustav Holst's The Planets, and I used the section from Venus. The violin solo became a flute solo, which was in the middle of yours with a little bit of change to it. So it was a really great process. In terms of your voice, I just tried to carve out a space so that when you were speaking, the instruments wouldn't cover up what you were saying, but there was still some interplay back and forth. I would say if we were going to collaborate more, which I would love to do, I would love to have real musicians join us, and that would be even a more three-dimensional experience. So that was my experience.
Cool. But we didn't actually clarify which music that was. Yeah, so we had that was a question for the audience. Could you tell which was Holly's and which was mine?
Crickets.
Yeah, so,
Was yours the second of the?
yes, mine was the second.
This
Yeah,
was the second.
yeah. So mine was the second one. But so it was Shane's reading. It was the quality of his voice, and then of course it was like Tim's too. It was both. It was there was something very sardonic, and so I'm also from New York, and it seems very New York, your attitude there's this aspect to it. It's like just how about this difference between discomfort and pain. So just how much discomfort do we have to accept in the world? And your book seems to go for a lot. You can accept a lot of discomfort, and so I like that actually. That's I have a kind of I lean towards darkness and sadness for the things that I like to. Yeah, my girlfriend. Did you just laugh at that? Because yeah. But so and she's my light, right? That's the nice balance. But so yeah, it was kind of an opportunity to kind of lean into that, and so I took a couple of chant melodies because it was the preacher character. I don't know if anybody recognized that I was playing with the Dies Irae theme, very much so in there, and there's another chant that I had completely masked and processed, and that was kind of running through it as well. But that was kind of what I ran with when it came to it.
Well, since the character that I have is the DJ, when my piece was chosen, I actually read the book first, and I didn't actually listen to his recording. And it wasn't like because I didn't want to listen to the recording. It's just that when I read books, I'm one of those people that gives every character a different voice. So I like to listen to the voice that I create when I'm reading the book. And then I took his recording just as guidelines to keep my composition within. And I thought of the DJ just as little episodes on the radio that we were hearing. And then there was a little bit of symbolism where there's just those weird sounds that kind of come in that's supposed to represent the virus taking over everything. So even in the intro, when he's talking about the truckers and he says there's particulate matter in the air, I was like, well, I have to symbolize that. So I was like, what sound effect sounds cool for matter going in the air when a trucker's driving and trying not to be distracted. So that was kind of the symbolism that I used throughout. But I mean, I read it first and then I got the recording and I was like, okay, I have to stay within 30 seconds. What can I write in 30 seconds to represent this one episode on the radio?
I didn't really choose because I don't think of my poems as musical vehicles at all, but somehow Tim actually requested that poem. I don't know how you knew about it, but anyway, somehow I sent him a voice recording of that, and that was that. And then Mark also had ideas about which poem, and then we also had other snippets we were looking at. But if I was asked to just look in the whole book and choose the best poem for something like that, I would just, be face down in the gutter by the end of the day. It would be so chaotic. There's no way I could do it. So I'm really grateful the way it turned out. It just happened. Thanks.
She's being a little falsely modest because actually you picked the second poem that we decided to put at the beginning. And we were looking through the book, we need to put something here. And then she says, what about this one? And I said, let's try it. And she read it, and it fit exactly, like to the second. And I went, that's it, man. You did. So you actually did pick one.
Okay, yeah.
So, but the other one, I called the piece Venus in Retrograde, and as soon as I started I sort of liked the angry, abstract, kind of angular mood of that poem. So I definitely wanted that, and giving fucks and women kicking ass and ruling the world, it all sounded good to me. So, no, I was that one had to be in. That had to be in.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm learning as we shepherd this book into the world is that it's very difficult to read from a novel. And so I was actually really happy when we were starting to plan this event that the idea for two composers collaborating came up, because as I said earlier, it instantly clicked for me. I was like, oh, we have these two really strong voices in the book throughout. So that was, it was actually a pretty easy decision, and really all I did was take the more substantial monologues out and tweak them a little bit, but not much really. But I was so floored when your work came back, and it's funny, Holly, that you say, I immediately got what you were going for when I heard the music that you had written, and it sounded, yes, exactly. I was like, yes, this is perfect. And it was such a nice foil to, Charlie's work, where, and again, immediately I was like, yes, this is the sound of, it's like, it's the sound of the end of the world, right? This preacher is really wants the world to end, and it's not a particularly happy thing, I guess. But as I said, it really was a great honor and an awesome experience. I'm just totally in awe of what you guys are able to produce musically. I thought it was really great. So thank you guys both.
You want to do 10-second closing thoughts if anyone has anything left unsaid, and then we'll take a question or two if there is one. You don't have to keep talking. It's a suggested invitation.
A peanut, neither a pea nor a nut. Talk amongst yourselves.
Can we just do that for the whole?
I have something. I'm really grateful because I was shoved outside my comfort zone, because I'll say yes to anything as long as it's a certain number of months in advance. And sure, that sounds good. And then when it came to actually, I really feel like the work of, Mark, and then of course Doug jumping in just added such, depth and beauty. And then Tim's piece, I feel like I was just sort of riding this wave of artistic beauty that just kind of came under the work and lifted it up. And so I'm really grateful. That's my major emotion about this.
Yeah, can we give Doug a...
Two things. Should this not be a yearly event? What do you think? We could do this again, I think. I'd like to. I think it's fabulous. I definitely want to thank Doug Matthews for coming in. I've been playing with Doug for 1981, maybe, when he had an afro. So that's all.
Does he not still have it?
just one thing that I wanted to note is that we never heard I didn't hear his piece. He might have listened to mine, but I never heard his piece until tonight. So I was really happy to hear how well ours went together, because it was like a surprise. Like, I was listening to it like you guys. So like our collaboration was a little bit separate. Like, I was directly with Shane and Charlie was directly with Shane. But our pieces, like, we never heard them. So we're just like, whoa, let's hope this sounds good.
Spanish moss is neither Spanish nor moss. Yeah.
Once I was driving past a car dealership with my daughter. They had a giant pile of pumpkins in front. I said, maybe when you buy a car, you get a free pumpkin. My daughter said, maybe when you buy a pumpkin, you get a free car. This experience reminds me of like those, speaking of childhood things, baking soda vinegar volcanoes, because we just have a bunch of creative people, and we actually didn't put that much time into this. No kidding, we all did put a lot of time and energy into it, but it's amazing how easily it came together, is what I'm getting at. It's just when you take creative people who are involved in different aspects of the arts and put them together, you just get this explosion of creative energy that I just find very invigorating. So thank you, everyone.
I want to thank you guys again, and Doug. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. I'll call on you. No pressure. It's okay if no. Okay, we do have a question. So if you state your question, I'll repeat it for posterity on this microphone.
First time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much I enjoy hearing artists talk about their work. I'm just curious how much you guys like talking about your work. Is it something you do because you're on the stage and you're supposed to, but do you really get off doing it? Don't take people behind the scenes?
I'll repeat the question really. Do you like talking about your work? In other words, how big is your ego now?
I find it pretty terrifying, actually. You guys are scary out there, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. It's part of the job sometimes. So I guess I feel somewhat comfortable with it. I don't. I guess I'm mostly a modest enough person that I don't talk about my work unless I'm asked. When I'm asked, I'm happy to do it, but I never actually talk about it otherwise.
Well, I'm a musician first and foremost, and then a composer. So I'm kind of a salesperson, so I talk about my work like a lot because I want people to hire me as a musician. So I'm used to talking about my music a lot. Now my compositions are usually like really personal and close to me. And I was in composition class with Kenny Werner, and I brought in a piece that I had written as like a dedication to my grandfather, and he like threw it in the trash. So he's like, this is awful and predictable. You need to do this and this. So like ever since then, I haven't really talked about my compositions. So this is like the first time for me in a long time to be able to talk about my work. But I like talking to people, especially in Timucua, because it's like a friendly environment where people who really love art come to see it. So
I love talking about writing and about other people's work and about poetry and how important it is. But when it comes to my own work, I have very little to say except when I finally cough something up, and then I'm happy to share it. And so I think among my writing friends, we do a lot of kvetching and complaining and, oh my God, I'm working on this thing, I'll never get it right, and it's not right. There's this one line, it'll never be right, and then, I don't know. But then you're so happy when something's finally kind of finished. And the only way you know it's finished is because you've either given up or it's published somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't want to be a downer, but that's the way it is for me.
I like talking about my work. And I completely agree with Holly because, man, if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else is going to do it. Speaking of that, I'm doing a concert here on October 12th, 4 world premieres. It's a concert of chamber music for woodwinds, and it's a world premiere of a flute sonata. It's going to be premiered by Nora Lee Garcia and Richard Drexler, and then the Alterity Chamber Quintet is going to play a woodwind trio, a woodwind quartet, and 2 woodwind quintets of mine. It's about a 90-minute concert with 4 world premieres, and I worked on this 10 years of work. So please come. I would love that. And yes, I like talking about my work. I'll be here after this if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, just to expand a little bit on my totally sufficient one-word answer. Like Charlie, I guess I am also, just deeply, incredibly humble, just overflowing, really, with humility. But no, I find it really, really uncomfortable to talk about my own work. I could talk about other people's books all day, and I love literature. But to me, I really try to avoid putting the microscope to my own work in that way. I mean, the microscope is a little bit different in the creative process. I was told really early on in my writing career to always keep in mind that I'm an artist and not a critic. And it really stuck with me. And I just think there is something intangible and unknowable about the creative process, and I don't want to fuck it up.
Agreed.
I also want to doubly endorse Mark's concert. Please do come to that. It's going to be amazing. And also CF2, or Central Florida Composers Forum. We do have another concert next month. It's September 29th. It is our typical our annual salon concert. It's kind of a grab bag. The composers, it's democratic. It's first come, first serve when they sign up to be part of it. So that's going to be next month.
I like ending on the meta question and on the idea of not fucking things up. I think we should all aspire to not do that. So if you want to talk more with the writers and the musicians after this, I'm sure they'll be happy to sign your books and body parts. I don't know how musicians do signings. Support Timucua, support Central Florida Composers Forum. Become a subscriber to Burrow Press. And thanks for coming out. Have a lovely evening. Be safe and don't fuck things up.